Switzerland's position at the crossroads of Europe has always attracted enterprising merchants and intrepid travelers from all parts of the world. Today, visitors come to enjoy the spectacular scenery. Rugged mountains shelter lush green valleys, and the colorful woodlands are a haven for wildlife, while tumbling mountain streams will soon combine their youthful energies to form Europe's major rivers. The very name Switzerland conjures up images of traditional wooden chalets and placidly grazing cows, their bells sounding musically in the still air. Some of the most majestic alpine scenery is to be found in Switzerland's largest canton, Graubünden, which lies in the southeast of the country, sharing borders with Austria and Italy. All this area of the Alps attract great numbers of tourists. In the summer, its unspoiled forests are a paradise for ramblers enjoying the sunshine. But in winter, the snow transforms the landscape into a wonderland for the alpine sportsman. The canton's world-famous resorts of Klosters and Davos have attracted visitors for over a century. The town of Davos, realizing the benefits of its pure mountain air, rapidly developed grand hotels for active tourists, while invalids, especially those with breathing problems, allergies or nervous disorders, benefited from specialist treatments at exclusive clinics. Today, visitors have an easy journey to Davos, thanks to an enterprising Dutchman, Willem Jan Holzboer, whose vision was to have a far-reaching effect on the whole region. While passengers in the last century were able to travel up the broad and beautiful Rhine Valley as far as Landquart in relative comfort and ease on the main line railway, they then had to change to stagecoach for a tortuous and tiring journey through the Prättigau Valley and over the bleak Wolfgang Pass. Winter months brought additional hazards of snow and freezing temperatures. Having an eye to the increased trade which would result, his solution was to build and run a private railway to connect the main line at Landquart with Davos, which within a few years became part of the Rhaetian Railway. Landquart today is an important railway centre boasting not one but two stations. The original mainline buildings are only a short step away from the more modern facilities of the Rhaetian Railway. However, passengers arriving from other parts of Switzerland behind the big, powerful RE44 Swiss national locomotives must change here, as the Rhaetian Railway network runs on meter gauge track. The train to Davos will be pulled by one of the modern 600 series electric locomotives, built by SLM and Brown Boveri in the 1970s and 80s. Rhaetian trains still retain vacuum brakes, a legacy of the early days of steam. A final safety check on the brakes, and our train is ready to begin its journey. The Davos Line lies at the northernmost part of the Rhaetian system, connecting with the Albula line at the junction at Filisur. It runs from Landquart through Kublis and Closters before climbing over the mountains to Davos and then on to Filisur. The track curves east, leaving the Rhine Valley behind, and begins to follow the course of the river Landquart. Our passage across the broad plain is rapid, and the village of Malens, nestling in the shadow of the Falkness mountain, soon comes into view. The vineyards on the surrounding slopes indicate that this is a wine-growing area. Grapes have been cultivated here since Roman times, and the region is justly famous for its high-quality red and white wine. Most of the vintage is consumed locally and can be a welcome refreshment for the thirsty traveller. Soon the mountains close in, and ahead the steep sides of the formidable Malins Gorge come into view. This narrow defile, whilst a key defensive point in years gone by, has always been an obstacle to travellers. Here, road and river are squeezed into a narrow gully. The railway track ran alongside the river for many years, but the danger of rockfalls and the need to widen the road led to the building of a tunnel in 1963, which, at 983 metres, is the longest on the line. With the Malins Gorge disappearing behind us, the fertile Prättigau valley opens out. The name Prättigau comes from the Latin praetum, or meadow, and the land surrounding the track remains largely pasture. Within minutes, our train arrives at Grusch, where a sister locomotive has literally gone off the rails. Not content to stay at the station, it paid a surprise visit to the village museum. However, the result was not a nasty accident, but a novel way to mark the centenary of the line in 1989. Picturesque Grusch echoes its history in its buildings, which display a mixture of influences, particularly from Austria, whose border is only a few kilometres to the north. The Austrians dominated this part of the country for many years. The distinctive station bells, once part of the Rhaetian signalling system, are now silent, but the flashing of the level crossing lights announce the arrival of our train. Once more the valley narrows, and again river, road and rail had to jostle for space. Originally, the track bed ran next to the river, but in 1978 a new tunnel was constructed, just part of the many improvements made by the Rhaetian Railway in the last few decades. The abundance of trees on the surrounding hillsides emphasize the importance of this natural resource to the Prättigau, and the timber yard and wood processing plant dominate the settlement at Fideris. The railway plays an important part in transporting both logs and the finished wood products to and from the region. Even the station was built from the local material, although the old steam locomotives used imported fuel. Kublis is an important station which handles a great deal of goods and passenger traffic summer and winter. And even before the snow arrives, it's important to ensure a good supply of new skis for the season. We've now travelled just over 21 kilometres since the start of our journey in Landquart, almost a third of the way along our route. The large hydroelectric generating plant, a giant in the village, provides 2/3 of the power needed to drive all the locomotives along this line. The electricity is generated at 66 kilovolts at the very low frequency of 16 2/3 cycles, a third of the rate of the normal domestic supply, and is reduced to 11 kilovolts at supply stations along the line for delivery to the contact wires and pantographs. Our locomotive's 4 motors produce 2,300 horsepower, all of which will be needed to tackle the steep gradients which lie ahead. The latest 600 GE44s are the fastest of the RhB's locomotives, capable of speeds of 90 kilometers per hour. After Kublis, the line begins to climb steadily. We have already gained almost 300 meters in height since leaving Landquart, but we must now double this before arriving at Closters. The train surges up the 1 in 23 gradient, passing through a tunnel constructed some 30 years ago. The water pipes for the generating station pass directly overhead, although the train travellers are totally unaware of this. The village of Saas is well worth a diversion from the journey, although it lies quite away from the station that bears its name. Its old timbered houses reflect the architecture of the Valais region of southwestern Switzerland, which is not surprising, as many people migrated from that area to settle here during the Middle Ages. Autumn is a time of harvest. The orchards yield a rich store, and a good supply of logs is gathered for winter warmth. The traditional wooden architecture even extends to the station buildings. The village of Cernius, on the opposite side of the valley, has long been a famous spa centre with its natural hot sulphur and mud baths. The station which serves it, however, lies on the northern slope of the valley, quite a tidy walk for the unsuspecting railway traveller. The road to the village passes below the Hexentobal Viaduct, whose distinctive fish-belly shape is the result of necessary reinforcements added in 1910 when heavier locomotives were introduced. The referendum to approve the building of the line took place in September 1886, although it was 2 years before construction began. But then so swiftly did the work progress that the first section to Closters was completed after only 16 months. Closters has special links with locomotive 615, for each of the modern Rhaetian engines proudly bears the emblem and name of a Graubünden village or town. Many of the original steam locomotives carried names as well as numbers, with the Landquart Davos initials indicating a date before the merger with the Rhaetian Railway. Mallet locomotives started to replace the original moguls in 1891, when it became apparent that the smaller engines were not powerful enough to tackle the steep gradients along the line. Sadly, most of the old steam locomotives are now only a memory. However, 2 of the last series, numbers 107 and 108, are still on the payroll and appear regularly, while 3 of the original mogul engines have also survived. Number 14 is now to be found on the Appenzellerbahnen in northeastern Switzerland, while number 11, Heidi, is a great attraction for the BOB in the Bernese Oberland. But the first lady of the Rhaetian Railway has to be number 1, Rhatia, which retired in 1929 after 40 years' faithful service. Following a long period of inactivity at the Landquart sheds, she was thoroughly restored by the Railway Preservation Museum at Blonay-Chambay and is now once more in Graubünden. At Landquart station, a very special train prepares to depart. It's October the 8th, 1989. 100 years on from the opening of the first section of the line and the culmination of the centennial celebrations on the Rhaetian Railway. Number 1, Rhatia, prepares to repeat the journey which she took exactly 100 years ago to this day. Now, well past that first flush of youth, she needs some assistance, ably provided by Loco 107. Before departure, the crew make a final inspection, and with a cosseting, embellishing bead of lubrication, all is made ready. The day dawned cold and wet, with a forecast of snow, but that would not deter the fans from turning out to mark the occasion. The two locomotives made light of the gradients, and even the thickly falling snow was not to dampen the enjoyment had by those lucky enough to be riding on this special train. True to form, the grand old lady of the Rhaetia Bahn arrived in style, 100 years old and not the least bit out of breath. We're enjoying rather more clement weather, and today an arrival in Closters is a stop on the journey, not a journey's end. There are two waypoints here, Klosters Dorf at the lower end of the village and the main station further up the valley. Switzerland prides itself on its efficient transport system, and trains are synchronized to connect with post buses for journeys to less accessible spots. Closters is about halfway along the line, and our train has now covered some 33 kilometres and climbed over 667 metres since departing. The settlement here grew up around a small monastery founded by monks from Corvalden at the beginning of the 13th century. Indeed, the word Kloster is the German for cloister. During the Reformation, the wealth of the dissolved monastery was distributed by the monks amongst themselves. The village church dates from 1493, and Christianity still thrives, with contemporary architecture fitting harmoniously into the surroundings. Agriculture has always been important. Augmented by those newly rich monks, it flourished. The Valais immigrants bringing their traditions to this too. Life was hard. In the winter of 1622, a great famine blighted their lives. Then in 1630, 800 of the local population died from plague. With the advent of the railway, the village grew as a tourist centre, and today it prides itself on its good food, comfortable hotels, and warm welcome. Some people come for the name. Others, with more illustrious connections, come for the winter sports. To many people, Closters is synonymous with the British royal family, who visit regularly, mingling with fellow peace bashers.
So, heiße Maroni ganz heiß.
Hot chestnuts are a welcome feast to keep out the winter cold before ascending to the white slopes high above the village. Closters did not remain the terminus of the line for long. Within 10 months, the remainder of the route to Davos was opened. However, this was the end of the journey for locomotives from Landquart, as a reversal had to be made here with a fresh engine taking over to complete the haul. Originally, the train passed over the Landquart River by a girder bridge before climbing up the side of the valley. But this was a costly and time-consuming process. So in 1930, the station was rebuilt and construction began on an extension to the line involving a new bridge and a curved tunnel, which eliminated the reversal. The new reinforced concrete bridge rapidly began to show signs of structural distortion caused by the pressure of the surrounding mountains, and in 1944 a strengthening beam was added, forming a useful footbridge. In order to gain the necessary height to cross the Wolfgang Pass, the railway builders were forced to take the line back down the south side of the Landquart Valley before looping back to continue the onward journey. Kavadurli Tunnel marks the end of the detour down the Landquart Valley, and now the track takes a complete about turn to retrace its route higher up the slope. Work on the line is a continual process, and the tunnel, which was built in 1890, is now getting a facelift. Back into daylight, and a swift glimpse down onto the track over which we've just passed. The station of Kavadurli is perched 160 meters above that of Closters, and to achieve this height, we've had to travel over 4 kilometers of track at a gradient of 1 in 22, the steepest on the line. Overhead are the wires which take the Gotschnabahn cable car on its mountain ascent. The railway swings south up a side valley, soon reaching the hamlet of Davos Line. Davos town gives its name to several outlying settlements, and the municipality stretches over a wide area. Although the lake glistens blue in the sunshine, its name Schwarzi, or Black Lake, indicates that reflections in this deep glacial pool are not always so placid. The surrounding hills are largely undisturbed and prove an ideal habitat for rare plants and wild animals. We're now approaching the highest point on the line, at 1,625 metres above sea level, and over 1,100 metres since the start of the journey at Landquart. Road and rail climb the slope together, car and train competing in a race to the summit. Through the trees of the Seahorn forest, we catch glimpses of Davos Lake, formed at the end of the Ice Age when a massive landslide dammed the valley. In summer, the Davosser Sea is a mecca for water sportsmen, while in winter, the lake hibernates under a blanket of ice and snow. Davos Dorf station at the northern end of the town was completely rebuilt in 1977. The modern concrete structure replacing the homely wooden chalet pictured here when, after electrification, the smut-free air made it possible to hang out the station master's washing. Davos is really two settlements in one, as Davos Dorf and Davos Platz have grown together over the years to form a single town, at 1,600 meters above sea level, the highest in Europe. From early times, the inhabitants of Davos were in close touch with other countries and cultures. Many became traders, braving the dangerous journey south into Italy to exchange the local produce for more exotic goods. Others became mercenaries and fought in countries all over the world. Davos Platz station was the terminus of the line for several years, and even today it's still necessary for us to change onto the smaller local shuttle for the remainder of our journey to Filisur. Today's modern station, with its 3 canopied platforms, is a far cry from the original wooden building which served the town in the days of steam. The sun-twisted spire of the Church of St. Johann is a distinctive landmark. Outside the station, a traditional form of transport provides a sightseeing alternative to the strenuous winter sports for which Davos is justly famous. An abundance of snow and ice, combined with warm sunshine and crisp mountain air, led to the early popularity of tobogganing, ice skating, and of course, skiing. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, creator of Sherlock Holmes, visited Davos in 1894 and helped to popularize the region. Sledging with horsepower is all very well, but smaller guests delight in speedier travel, and the mountains above Davos provide opportunities for thrills and spills galore. For a youngster, the nursery slopes offer a challenging ride. But for those with more sporting ambition, there is the Schatzalp toboggan run, where the adventurous can pit their skills against the icy bends along the 2.5-kilometer course.
Hello.
Back in the town, there's more winter fun. A short stroll along the elegant Davos High Street brings us to the ice rink complex. Originally, the frozen lake provided sport for local skaters, but in 1869, the first official rink was built to cater for the tourist influx. Such was the demand that within 2 years it had to be enlarged, and today Davos boasts one of the world's biggest natural ice rinks. Ice dancing and figure skating can be enjoyed by people of all ages and abilities, but you need to be young and fit to excel at the more demanding speed skating. Davos Rink is a favorite training venue for Olympic champions of many nationalities, and practice is essential. Though even for the expert, the ice does not always run smooth. Ice hockey is almost a national religion in Switzerland, with practice sessions taking place throughout the year. Davos has a world-renowned team founded in the 1920s, which today has the advantage of an indoor rink bearing the distinctive roof shape that identifies it as one of the most prominent landmarks of the town, winter and summer. Davos Station was the end of the line for over 20 years. It was only in 1906 that work began to connect the route from Landquart to the Albula line at Filisur. This 20-kilometer link took 3 years to complete, a slow process when compared to the 2-year, 50-kilometer construction between Landquart and Davos. The push-pull service between Davos and Filisur is much smaller than that from Landquart. Nevertheless, it provides a vital lifeline for the communities along the Landwasser Valley, especially important in winter, when icy road conditions make travelling more tricky. We have now passed over the watershed, leaving the Landquart River well behind, and our journey now follows the Landwasser river valley. The narrowness of the terrain ahead means that river and rail are never far apart during the journey. The little chapel at Frauenkirche overlooks the railway. From the front, it's similar to many others in this valley. However, the distinctive shape of the back testifies that while the good citizens of the area put their trust in God, they also believed in protecting his house against avalanche by secular means. This region is largely agricultural, with the cows grazing on the high Alps in summer, preserving the valley grass against winter shortage ahead. Chalets built in traditional style are scattered all around the region, and the stations en route serve a whole area rather than individual settlements. The Rhinohorn cable car ends at Davos Glaris, where we must wait for the up train to pass. For other than in stations, the line is single track. The coordination of train passing is handled by a computer installed in 1987 to operate the railway signalling system. A system that not only regulates the running of the trains, but indicates the speeds at which they should travel. Up to this point, the building of the railway was relatively easy. But with the entry into the Zugen Gorge, the valley narrows and the line has to pass over impressive viaducts and through numerous tunnels before emerging into the Albula Valley. Those who constructed the line, though using the relatively new Brandt water-powered percussion drills, relied heavily on manpower, mostly Italian workers with trusty picks to drive through the solid rock. There are 10 viaducts along this stretch of the line, all of which were built in the single year of 1908 using scaffolding made from local timber. These handsome stone structures blend in harmoniously with the surrounding countryside, with graceful arches ranging in span from 5 to 55 meters. Over the next 12 kilometers of track, there are no less than 14 tunnels, twice as many as that found on the rest of the line. The gloom yields to the lights of the locomotive, while the cab glows its indications to the driver. At Brombaerts, the railway builders were faced with the task of bringing the line across the river Landwasser. They accomplished this by taking the train out of one tunnel 22 meters above the valley floor, over an elegant stone viaduct spanning 43 meters, before once more plunging it into darkness. Wiesen village, perched high on the mountainside, is one of several settlements on the line which gives its name to stations far below. At Wiesen, the train pauses momentarily while preparing to cross one of the most spectacular viaducts in the whole of Switzerland. Using wood from the surrounding trees, the builders made an immense scaffolding upon which to lay their stone. Working 87 meters above the river bed, they built a structure over 200 meters long, with a central arch spanning some 55 meters. This magnificent stone construction is one of the largest masonry arches in the world. With the last of the tunnels behind us, we once more pass through the glorious colours of the sunlit autumn countryside, making good time on level ground. Below us, we catch a glimpse of the track of the RhB line, which we will shortly join. Rounding the final bend, we leave the Landwasser valley to enter the broader RhB valley and journey's end at Filisur. We have now travelled almost 70 kilometres since the start of the journey, visiting 24 stations. Filisur is the end of the Davos Line, and there's the chance to explore the pretty village nestling in the valley below the station, with its old houses painted in typical local fashion. Or we can continue our journey on the Rhaetian Railway, perhaps down to Chur, passing over the famous Landwasser viaduct. Or alternatively, catch the connection to St. Moritz through the breathtaking Burgund to Preda spirals. Whatever our choice, Filisur, at the heart of Canton Graubünden, is probably best reached by the distinctive and delightful Davos Line.